When you look at enforcement of regulation, how do you enforce it? It's one thing having rules. What happens if those rules are not followed? If there were no enforcement procedures, well, it wouldn't be a big deal then if rules were not followed. People wouldn't really care. So you need some sort of enforcement procedure. So if the registrar receives a complaint that a regulated person, authorized or licensed, is failing to comply, or they have reason that such a person fails to comply, they investigate. How do they investigate? Certainly they need certain things that allow them to investigate. If they knocked on your door as the registrar and said, "Hello, may we investigate?" and you said no and turned them away, and they had no power to enter into your premises, that would be a problem. So along with actually investigating, they need the powers to investigate. So the Financial Markets Act gives them a power. So when they perform an on-site visit, they've got the following powers. So they may perform a visit at any time during business hours with a regulated person. So when you sign up to being a regulated person, you agree to this at the beginning and you say to yourself, okay, I am now a regulated person, which means that at any time I may be investigated. So they then are searched. They can search for documents, they can examine the documents, make copies, extracts, or they may temporarily remove the documents. So the person conducting this investigation is not just a random person. They need to be a regulated person in terms of the FMA as well. And they need to have a document explaining exactly the nature of their investigation. When it comes time to order an inspection, you have to do it in terms of the Inspection of Financial Institutions Act. So this act sets out the procedure in which an investigation needs to be done. Even if an organization is not registered, if they are carrying on the business of an authorized user or participant, you then need to investigate them and see if that is the case. If that is the case, they then need to be registered. So that is what happens then. They are investigated, and if it is found that they are conducting business that needs to be registered, they will then be required to register. Financial institutions include the following things: exchanges, we have discussed exchanges; clearinghouses, who's an authorized user; a financial services provider. In the next module, we will deal with phase in depth. A CSD or participant, someone who sells; a nominee; a credit rating agency, or any other person who conducts the business of a financial institution. So this is ensuring that people that conduct this type of business have their clients' best interests at heart. So the FMA and the FCA is making sure that they are protecting South African citizens from these institutions, because it's obvious that the people that work at these institutions have the financial knowledge, and not all South African citizens have this knowledge. So you want to ensure that you are protected from the people who have the knowledge. An associated institution is these things. So any person in which a financial institution conducts business, if they have an interest, direct or indirect; pension funds, and administrators of financial institutions. So you can see here, the inspection is very broad. So even companies that deal with financial institutions, for example, if you are an attorney of a financial institution, you are covered under this act, and you may be investigated by the FSCA. When you talk about the powers of the investigator, so the law will have no impact if that investigator has no power. So if the investigator comes knocking on your door, it's pretty useless for them to knock on your door and find evidence that you're contravening the act, and then there's nothing that they can do about it. So what can they do? They can summon any person that they believe has control of documents and get that person to lodge the documents. They may, without prior knowledge, remember they still need a warrant or permission, enter and search premises and require the production of documents. Open any strong room safe, examine and make extracts of documents. They can even remove the documents if they give a receipt. They can seize documents and retain the seized documents as long as those proceedings take. And like I said before, these proceedings may even take years. A representative, like an attorney, like I said, can also be investigated. So if you have an attorney, you think you have attorney-client privilege. But if the FSCA comes and investigates the attorney, there are certain documents that the FSCA may have access to. Obviously, those documents that are privileged, they will not have access to. But there are documents that are not covered by attorney-client privilege. So just keep in mind. They may also summon people they believe to be in possession of such documents. Here again, with a warrant or consent, the inspector may, without any prior notice, this is the inspector now of financial institutions, similar to the FSB, enter premises, enter and search, enter any strong room or safe, examine and make extracts, and retain seized documents. So you can see the people that are enforcing these laws have similar powers. If you talk about the inspector, the FSCA, and the Directorate of Market Abuse, they have similar powers and similar things that they are allowed to do. So if a person has documents, and those documents were seized, they retain a receipt, okay? And then a person being examined has a right to legal representative. So if you are summoned by the FSCA or the Directorate of Market Abuse or the Inspector of Financial Institutions, you have a right to legal representation. So you have a right to call a lawyer before you say anything. And this is important as well, because we are a constitutional country. The values of our constitution are of utmost importance. So you must remember that when you are conducting a search, you need to have regard to decency, dignity, freedom, security, and personal privacy. This does not mean that you can stand at the entrance to your building and say, no, this is my private building, because all rights are limited. However, this justifies the fact that a search cannot be done at night. Why does that make sense? So if you think about at night, you're in the privacy of your own home. Generally, you're in pajamas. You don't want people to see that. So it is justified that a search should take place during business hours. This does not mean that a search can only take place on business premises. Very often, simultaneously, they search business premises as well as the homes of directors and senior employees at the same time. If you guys have heard of a dawn raid, okay, that is the name that it has been given. First thing in the morning during business hours, they will go search all these properties simultaneously to try to find the information they are looking for. They do it simultaneously because if you're being searched at the office and you know that you have documentation at home, one of the first things you will do is phone home and say, quick, hide these documents X, Y, and Z. So that is why these searches are carried out simultaneously. But obviously keep dignity, privacy, security in mind. So don't go and throw people's personal belongings out into the street.